The year is 638 AD. A 14-year-old girl is brought into the Chinese royal palace as a low-level concubine. When the emperor dies, tradition says her life is basically over. She is shipped off to a monastery, forced to shave her head, and told to spend the rest of her life in quiet exile. Most people would just accept their fate. She didn't. From inside that monastery, she managed to orchestrate a secret romance with the new emperor. She got herself brought back to the palace, and then she went to work. She systematically outsmarted every rival, eliminated the empress, and took her spot. But even being empress wasn't enough. When her husband died, she looked at the men in line for the throne and said, "Actually, I'll take it from here." She crowned herself emperor, the only female emperor in 3,000 years of Chinese history. She ruled an entire golden age, expanded the empire, and literally invented new words in the dictionary just to flex. Her name was Wu Zetian. There's something people notice about the Asian woman, but they don't really sit with it long enough to understand what they're actually seeing. They'll say things like they age better or they're just naturally put together, but that's surface level. If you actually slow down and pay attention, it's not one thing. It's a bunch of small things that don't break over time. And that's really the difference. 1. Maintains over time. Take aging, for example. This is the one everyone points to first, and it's also the one people get wrong the most. It's not some hidden genetic advantage that suddenly activates at 30. It's the fact that a lot of the Asian woman doesn't treat self-care like a phase. It's not something you start when things go wrong. It's something that's just there, quietly, every day. The way they eat is already more controlled, not in a strict or obsessive way, but there's less chaos. You don't see as much of that pattern where someone eats badly for months, then suddenly tries to reset everything with some extreme diet. It's more stable than that. Same with skincare. It's not dramatic. It's not about fixing damage after it shows up. It's about not letting it build up in the first place. Sunscreen isn't optional. Hydration isn't something you remember occasionally. It's routine. And when you stack that over years, it doesn't look impressive day to day. But over time, it separates people. That's why it feels like they're aging differently, when really they're just not interrupting the process with neglect. 2. Moving together, not competing. Now shift your focus away from individuals and look at how the Asian women behave in groups. This is where things get interesting, because the difference isn't loud. It's in what doesn't happen. There's less friction, less awkward overlap where two people are trying to take the same space at the same time, less of that subtle competition that turns into tension. There's more awareness of timing. You'll notice people stepping in at the right moment, then stepping back just as naturally. And it doesn't feel forced. It just flows. Watch groups like Blackpink carefully. Not even the performances, just how they exist together. Even when one person is clearly the focus, the others don't disrupt that. They support it without disappearing. That kind of balance only happens when people are paying attention to more than just themselves. And once you start noticing it, you see it outside of entertainment too. In friendships, in social settings, even in work environments. 3. Put together without trying. Another thing that's easy to overlook is how the Asian women present themselves when they're not trying to stand out, because that's where the baseline shows. For a lot of people, casual is where everything drops. The effort disappears completely and you can tell. Here, it doesn't drop the same way. Even when it's simple, it's still held together. Clothes still make sense. Nothing looks completely random. Hair, skin, posture, it's all still maintained at a certain level. And that's why it reads as polished, even when it's clearly not dressed up. It's not that they're doing more in that moment. It's that the baseline never fell low enough to create a contrast. 4. Understanding the structure. Then there's something people don't like to talk about, but it's very real. Understanding hierarchy. Not in a rigid or oppressive way, but in a practical sense. There's a stronger awareness of how to move in different situations, who's leading, what the tone is, how much space to take. And because of that, you don't see as many social missteps. You don't see as much overstepping or people talking at the wrong time or pushing themselves into positions that don't fit the moment. Instead, there's adjustment. And that adjustment makes everything smoother. It removes friction before it even starts. 5. Finding her place instantly. That same awareness shows up again when they're placed in new environments. A lot of people react immediately when they're somewhere unfamiliar. They either resist it or try to force their own way of doing things into it. Here, the approach is different. There's a pause first. Observation. Understanding how things work before deciding how to act. And that changes everything, because instead of clashing with the environment, they align with it. That's why they tend to transition well across different spaces, different cultures, different expectations, different social dynamics. It doesn't throw them off the same way. They adapt without making it obvious. 6, effort turned into instinct. And then there's the final piece, which is probably the most misunderstood. The effort. Because the effort is there, but it doesn't look like it. And that's what confuses people. When something has been repeated enough times, refined enough times, it stops looking like effort. The rough edges disappear, the hesitation disappears. So what you see is something smooth, controlled, almost effortless. But it's not. It's just been done so many times that the struggle is no longer visible. When you put all of this together, what stands out about the Asian woman isn't something loud or exaggerated. It's the absence of chaos. Nothing feels random. Nothing feels out of place. Everything sits where it's supposed to. And that's why it hits differently. Because instead of trying to stand out, it just doesn't fall apart. Some people are raised to express themselves, others are raised to perform. And that difference shows. A lot of Asian women grow up in highly structured environment. Not loose, not negotiable, structured. There's a schedule. There are expectations. There's constant correction. You don't just get praised, you get refined. You don't stop when you're tired, you stop when it's done right. That kind of environment wires you differently. You learn discipline before you learn confidence, execution before self-expression. And over time, that builds something most people don't have, the ability to perform on command. Not when you feel like it, not when inspiration hits, on command. Studies on these parenting systems show a strong focus on self-discipline, high expectations, and achievement from early childhood, which means by the time they grow up, consistency is normal. Pressure is normal. Being evaluated is normal. Even things people complain about, like strict routines, constant feedback, academic pressure, are part of the design. In some households, even daily life revolves around performance, schoolwork, practice, improvement, sometimes to the point where it even affects sleep patterns because achievement comes first. That's how deep it goes. So when you see someone like Jenny looking polished, composed, and untouchable, you're not looking at talent. You're looking at years of repetition, pressure, and precision training. While most people are still deciding who they want to be, they've already been trained to execute at a high level. No excuses, no off switch, no waiting for motivation. And in a world where most people rely on how they feel, they rely on systems. That's the difference. One side waits to feel ready. The other side was raised never to need that feeling in the first place.